All right, well, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Liz Hill. I'm the Associate Director for the University of Colorado Boulder's Ombuds Office. So thank you for being here and attending our office's Small Bite, Big Impact Lunch and Learn program. A friendly reminder that the purpose of these programs is to really just to provide a quick 30-minute bite-sized amount of information, giving you some skills that you can take back and implement immediately and get you back to your workday. It's really not intended to be a full workshop, and therefore engagement is going to be limited. A few housekeeping items before I introduce today's speaker, some logistics, if you will. You'll notice you are all muted and your video is turned off, and that's basically to reduce distractions. We are going to use chat, and we'll use that for to provide links, to ask questions, for you to ask questions, etc. So if you haven't already, go ahead and open up your chat box. Of course, as you probably all know by now, your name does appear when you're chatting to everyone. You do have the ability to do direct chats to one individual as well. So you can do some private chats if needed. Today we have Lauren, who I'll introduce in a moment. But while Lauren is presenting, Georgie Getley, our program admin, and I will field any non-substantive questions you might have during the session. And we'll go ahead and park any substantive questions until the Q&A at the end. We will leave a few minutes at the end where Lauren will answer any questions you might have. We are, as I noted, recording, and that's intended to reach as many people as possible, including those who are unable to attend today. The recording will be up on our website within the next day or two. And also, in addition to that, in the next few days, we'll be sending you a follow-up email that will have the relevant links that we're including, additional resources. I know Lauren provided a PowerPoint, a PDF of her PowerPoint, and things of that nature. So you'll have that, you'll have access to all of that as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Lauren Harris. Lauren is CU Boulder's Assistant Director of Training and Development. And Lauren's going to unlock some secrets about the future of our work, in particular hybrid work, that the organizational employee development team has put together a whole learning series on this topic. So she's going to unlock some of those secrets and also give you information about how to register and attend all the different sessions that are part of that learning series. I suspect many of you probably know Lauren from the terrific trainings and services she provides our campus community. She brings a wealth of experience to the table, having thrived in the HR field since 2013. Her background is a fascinating mix of theater, music, and leadership, a powerful combination for engaging our learners. And Lauren's passion lies in helping people grow, both professionally and personally. She's an expert in learning and development and loves facilitating sessions on thought-provoking topics. So as Lauren gets started here, I'll go ahead and include a link to her full campus bio in the chat. So without any more hesitation, let's go ahead and give a warm welcome to Lauren. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Liz. Very excited to be here, and I'm happy to be part of this program. Hello to all of you. I'm excited to engage with you for about 25 minutes. As Liz said, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bite-sized overview that is part of our hybrid training series that I'll link to at the end and get you connected to so you understand where that comes from. Really, all of the content that we're going to review today and that really is covered in our hybrid series comes from the most recent research around the hybrid work. There's still a lot of research coming out. You know, hybrid has been around for a long time, but not at the saturation that it is since really 2020. And so this series got implemented in 2021, and we've been updating the content and the training since then. And so this is some of the most updated information that we have. What I would like to invite you to do, though, is go ahead and pull up whatever your note-taking system is, and that's where you can take notes about today's presentation. You will be given a copy of the slides, a PDF version, and then I do have a hyperlink to get you connected to the full training if you're interested in joining us, and we'd love to have you join. So welcome to Unlocking the Secret of Hybrid Work. All right, here we go. So I want to first share, we've been facilitating these series since 2021. And I start each session with what's called the Mentimeter. It's just a cool way to collect data. And so what I always ask at the beginning of every session is, what is the single biggest challenge that you have to either leading a hybrid workforce or as an individual contributor participating in a hybrid workforce? And these are the themes that have come out of 3 years of just qualitative data from staff and faculty at CU Boulder. The biggest themes that come out is they have a hard time connecting. So either individual contributors have a hard time connecting to their leaders, or leaders have a hard time connecting to the organization. We also have an idea around focus. People get so interrupted, right? There's lots of distractions that come up, both technological and non-technological, when we're in our home environment, or when we're commuting, or when we're in our office environment, or when we're trying to do both at the same time. So focus has been a consistent theme to come up with a challenge as it relates to the hybrid environment. Another one is engagement. What we know about engagement is one of the biggest areas at risk in sustaining a hybrid world. The problem that we have with engagement is leaders at our organization are responsible for creating the conditions where people can engage, and then individual contributors are responsible for choosing to engage. So it's certainly a two-way street, and we don't always make that easy for each other. So that's one of the barriers and the themes that come out from our CU experience. And then these last two probably are not surprises to you, but accountability, which is how do we follow up on all of our tasks? How do we make sure that we're pushing our projects through? How do we make sure that we're aligned to the organization and that we're completing meaningful work? And probably the work that we needed to complete like before 2021 looks a little different than it does now. And then collaboration. We're all learning how to use these kind of synchronous and asynchronous technological tools. How do we collaborate in real time? How do we collaborate through all the channels that we have? We've got Slack, we've got Teams, we've got Google Hangout, we've got Zoom, we've got all these different platforms to utilize. And sometimes we kind of get stuck in how to collaborate through all of those. I just wanted to share some actual real themes and data that has come out of me asking that question for every single one of these sessions I've taught for the past 3 years. It's what's the biggest challenge? And these are some of the biggest challenges. I share these also with some highlights in that what we're going to cover in the few minutes we have together today are some strategies that will actually help combat each one of these themes. So with that, these are two main agenda items that we're going to talk about. One is we're going to look at what's called, we have these exaggerated distances that get created in the hybrid space, and we're going to talk about how we minimize those. And then we're going to look at how does managing performance look different in the hybrid space. So those are just the two kind of spotlight highlights I'm going to share with you today. And as Liz said, this is just an overview. We're going to give you some skills to walk away with, some tools to implement, and then invite you hopefully to join the full session. Before I jump into the distances, though, I invite you to put into the chat anytime a question that you have. Liz or Georgie will ping me to the chat. So don't hesitate to put that there, and then we'll make sure to answer the questions before the end of our day. So let's start with the 3 distances that we need to be thinking about to minimize in the hybrid workplace. So here are the 3. One is we have a strategic distance. Second, we have what's called an operational distance. And then third, we have what's called an affinity distance. And these distances get exaggerated the farther away we are physically from people. So when we think about strategic distance, the definition there is the gap between what a team is doing and what matters for the organization. And so it's hard enough to stay aligned to the organization when we're all physically in a location together. It gets even harder to do that when we are farther apart from each other, and when what has mattered has probably shifted, right? So if we haven't had those strategy conversations or those planning conversations, and we aren't tuned in to what our stakeholders need from us now, what our clients need from us, what our students, what our alum, all of those folks, then we'll probably have some pretty big gaps there. So that's our first distance we want to be thinking about minimizing. And I have some strategies for you as soon as I review the other 2. So operational distance says this is the efficiency of a team's operating processes to get work done and the cadence of the results that you produce. So whether it's your projects, right? Whether it's your meetings, whether it's trainings, whether it's teaching, it's education, living in residence life in the residence halls, any facet that a stakeholder engages in our business operations, how efficient is that for them? And again, this has shifted pretty dramatically over the past 3 years. What I hear time and time again, and where I work with teams regularly to try to unpack, is how do you navigate all of the different communication channels that exist at your fingertips now? So that's one thing that kind of, I think, halts people's processes or gets in the way of really efficient operational processes is they're like, I don't know when to email, I don't know when to Teams, I don't know when to hop on a Zoom, I don't know when to put this into, a chat. So having conversations and getting really sophisticated about how your team operates and what works best for your organization for the output that you produce, that can help minimize that distance. The third distance is what we call affinity distance. And this says it's the gap between the interconnectedness among your team members. How well does everybody know each other? How well does everybody know everyone's hybrid communication styles? How well does everybody know how they like to engage in a hybrid space? If we don't know those answers as leaders, or we don't know those answers as individual contributors, and we haven't talked about that as a team, then that affinity distance typically gets even more exaggerated. This one in particular, I think, is really important for us to be paying attention to from a culture perspective, because one of the newest biases that has come out that we need to be mindful of is what's called proximity bias. And so occasionally we may have a unintentional drive to support the people that we're closer with in an organization, like physically that we're working in an office with. We might have more time with them, we might provide more resources to them, we might provide more projects and access to them. We might not provide that same level to folks who are at a distance from us, who are working remotely or in a different space. So our proximity bias is directly tied to the affinity distance. And so just something for y'all to be keeping in mind of how equally are you spreading your time amongst your in-person and your remote and your hybrid workforce. That's a really critical item to unpack and make sure that we're being kind of equitable across those lines. So with that, what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of insight for each one of these distances. So when we think about strategic distance, so you have this in your guide, I'm going to invite you to have these conversations with your teams after today, or even maybe with your leadership groups, or even maybe just individually thinking. But here are the questions that I would invite you to answer that will help you close your strategic distance. One, why does your team exist? How does your team help accomplish the goals of the university? And most critically, there, can everybody on your team articulate that? Next, are your employees' performance goals defined, talked about, and are they aligned? When was the last time you had a performance conversation with your direct reports? Finally, have your goals and priorities shifted? Have your stakeholders' needs changed? And have you modified your projects and processes to match our new hybrid reality? So those are what we call some analyzers. Those are our analyzer questions to help us close our strategic distance. Okay, let's move on to our next one. So here's our operational distance analyzers. What results does your team create, and not just activity? I grapple with this all the time. If you've ever gone through a few days in a work week, or even a week, or maybe even a month, and you said, I've just done all of this work, but I haven't felt like I've produced anything of value. I'm just attending meetings and answering emails, and I'm not really doing anything meaningful that moves our office forward or supports our key stakeholders. That's the difference between kind of the results that we create versus just activity. And I don't know about you all, but I didn't know that we could get busier in the hybrid world as far as meetings go, right? But like our meetings got even busier because now we don't have to physically commute all the time. We can just hop on a link and hop off a link. So that actually adds sometimes to increasing activity and decreasing results. So think about what that means for your team. How would you maybe shift that to start creating more space to drive results operationally? This is a powerful question for you to answer with your team and together. The second one here is, how efficient are your communication channels? So one of our big operational distances gets super exaggerated because of this element. So if we have not honed in, really dialed in, talked about our communication channels, and the key piece here is folks always ask me like, well, what's the best way to do it? And the answer is whatever works best for your team. That's the challenge. We have such a diverse workforce that works at CU Boulder. So what works for one team may not work for another one. So the key here is that we have to actually ask these powerful questions. We have to go through our brainstorm process, collect information from our teams, and then identify what works best, probably through a little bit of trial and error. I'm sure you all have been doing some of this just naturally over the past few years because you probably have been forced to. And if we can be more mindful about creating conditions that allow us to build really efficient communication channels, that can set us up for success and unlock some of the hybrid successes. And then finally, when it comes down to operational distance, and you're going to see a tie to this with performance management as well, is do you regularly break down large projects into smaller goals to build the cadence of completing high impact work? And I love that language of cadence because it's like, how are we consistently pushing this out in a regular basis? Because we lose so much time when we're farther apart from each other. And the number one strategy to do that is we take our big goal that we need to accomplish by the end of the cycle year, by the end of the academic year, by the end of the financial year, whatever it is. We take the big goal and then we break it down into these bite-sized, manageable pieces, and we have conversations about what that looks like so that we can track it along the way. This is a differentiator for those that succeed really well in a hybrid space and those that don't, is the ability to break down large projects into smaller bite-sized pieces and keep a cadence of output moving. All right. Finally, we have affinity distance. So affinity distance, our analyzers here is how well does your team know one another? And how well do you know the people on your team? So if we don't have a lot of knowledge about one another, if I don't know what your style is, your communication, your hybrid approach, what drives you, what allows you to help focus, what brings out engagement for you, what frustrates you in the hybrid space, if I don't know those questions, the answers to those questions, it's really hard to minimize our affinity distance. And same here is, do we spend some intentional time connecting with one another outside of business needs? This is falls into one of my favorite categories that I like to share with people when I'm facilitating, which is these questions might make common sense. It's like, well, duh. Yeah, we should know one another. And yeah, we should spend time getting to know one another. But does that fall into common practice? And we don't always see common sense fall into common practice. So that would be kind of my push and my ask for you on this one is how actually common are you doing this? How frequently? And does everybody on your team, can they answer these questions as well? So this is your first to do, is for you to go back with your team, analyze your team's impact through the ideas of these distances. And then how do you go about trying to minimize the distances by answering the analyzers and identifying strategies that are going to work for your unit? Okay, that's our first section. Here's our second section. So the way that we have to engage in management and the way that we engage in performance looks different than it did before 2020. Our previous strategy was what we commonly called, what was in all of the business books and management books, called management by walking around. We would literally go to someone's desk, right? We would go to the coffee room. We would engage in conversation informally all the time. And that's how we checked up on things. And that was the number one performance strategy before 2020. Now, what we have to shift to is what we call outcomes-based management. So outcomes-based management is a whole new way that we kind of manage productivity, that we manage engagement, and that we manage output in a hybrid world. So a couple pieces, I'm just going to give you some insights to think about. We really dive deep into this in our formal training. But one is, hopefully we're still using SMART goals. SMART goals have been around for a long time. SMART goals, it's an acronym, stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. So hopefully we're aligning all of our performance goals and our performance evaluations through that lens. Here's the two differentiators though. There's a difference between what's called an outcome or an outcome goal and a process goal. So a process goal is what is almost tied to that operational distance that we talked about for the second one in our minimizing distances, is what are the daily or weekly or monthly items I need to complete in order to accomplish my big SMART goal. If we are not breaking down our outcomes goal into process goals and breaking that down on that very short cadence, it's very difficult to move projects forward in a hybrid environment. It's very challenging to have an impact in a hybrid environment. So the best that are doing this at a high level, at a high impact level, are checking in regularly and they're breaking down larger goals. What we know is there's an immediate correlation between the time spent with your team and their ability to thrive in a hybrid environment. So hopefully you're spending more time. Hopefully we're breaking down projects. We're checking in on things regularly. And we've provided more of a cadence of how to move those items forward. Okay? So that is kind of just the high level overview. Your to-do here is, if you haven't broken down your large goals into process goals, meaning what are the daily, weekly, or monthly things I need to do in order to meet the large goal, that's your to-do. That's your takeaway. That's your skill. That's your strategy to implement after today. All right, finally, I just want to share with you what we do cover in the full hybrid series. So if you're interested in any of this, you can come see our team. The hybrid series up there, that is a hyperlink that takes you directly to our website where all of these courses are listed. But we have 3 courses. We have one that's called Leading Teams in a Hybrid Environment. We have one called Managing Hybrid Performance. And then we actually have one for how to be a high impact, how to be a individual contributor in a hybrid world. So 2 are for leaders and 1 is for individual contributors. And these are the topics that we cover, and we give strategies, recommendations, best practices, all of those pieces, skills to implement these. So we talk about psychological safety in the hybrid world, how we build that. We talk about synchronous and asynchronous technological tools. We go over this model called the 8 attributes of a high-performing team, and we understand and unpack how that applies in a hybrid world. We look at, this is what I talked about today, this kind of organizational team and individual goals, our outcomes-based management, how projects, meetings, and communication thrive in a hybrid space. And then these last 3, which are really critical because they're very high risk in a hybrid world, which is engagement, minimizing burnout, and then maximizing productivity. So those are all the pieces that you can expect for topical areas in skill development in the full series. All right, well, with that, I would love to take the last few minutes for our time together today to answer any questions or take any comments. Anybody have any questions or comments that they would like to ask?
Lauren, there is one. Pilar had one. She wanted to know if you had examples of process goals in relation to SMART goals.
Yeah, Pilar, it's a great question. Excuse me. So let's say I'll use one that hopefully we all could connect to. One thing I love about our campus is we're very cyclical in nature, right? We repeat projects and we repeat events. So let's say, let's say we have like a welcome event. Student Affairs is doing like a new family welcome event that they do every year in the fall. So the SMART goal would be, okay, well, here's the event that needs to get executed. Here's when, why, where, and how, and what we're going to do. The process goal then would be, okay, if we're executing this on September of 2025, what are all the things that I need to be doing previous to that in order to accomplish that? So we would back up 6 months, a year, whatever it needs to say. And we say, okay, by fall 2024, X, Y, and Z would need to be accomplished. By spring 2024, X, Y, Z would need to be accomplished. By summer 2024, X, Y, Z would need to be accomplished in order to make sure that we can execute on the program in September. And what I invite us to do is get almost really minimal on it, is what is weekly needs to be doing, right? What do we need to be doing on a weekly basis in order to move to our monthly outcomes, our calendar or our semester outcomes, and then our calendar outcomes. So that's kind of what that looks like.
All right. Pilar says thank you. So I'm guessing you answered that one.
Great.
Lauren, I had one. It sounds like this sounds a lot like project management. I know you do have project management training sessions as well, but do you have any applications that people might use to help them break down?
Yeah, and I would say project management is certainly one of the skills that will help with this. When it comes to a project management like tool, here's the problem is there are a plethora of them out there, right? There's like an innumerable amount of project management tools that you could use. The key is, and you're going to be annoyed by this answer, but it's the correct answer, is you got to pick the tool that you're actually going to use. That is the key. So we don't need the fancy, project management institute tool that's sanctioned by the PMP, right? Like that's probably too high level for us. So what works for you? Is it straight teams? Is it using a Kanban board? Is it using you have the application in Teams where there's a project planner tool? Is it using just a Google? Is it using Outlook? You can use anything. The key is you got to create something that you all are going to commit to using on a regular basis. That's like the ultimate need.